What's up, everyone? Welcome back. This channel is dedicated to all things personal finance. Whether you're just trying to get your head above water and pay your bills on time, or whether you're new to investing or even a seasoned investor, this channel is going to have a lot of good information for you. So be sure to subscribe, leave a comment down below. It's free and it really helps support this channel. So today we're going to be talking about how to quickly and rapidly increase your credit score as high as humanly possible. And this is important because you see those guys over at creditkarma.com, they estimate that somebody with bad credit is over a lifetime going to spend an extra $200,000 in random interest and fees. That's a lot of money. So we want to make sure your credit score is as high as humanly possible. That way you get the best rates on all of your plans. So in this video, we're going to be talking about 5 quick, easy ways to increase your score as much as possible. We're going to start off by talking about some secured credit cards, and then we're going to move on to becoming an authorized user on somebody else's account. We're also going to be talking about Experian Boost and how that can affect your credit score. And then we're going to wrap things up with talking about third-party data providers as well as credit builder loans. So let's get started. So it should go without saying, but the biggest key to raising your credit score is to actually pay your bills on time, every time. So that should be your number one priority. Even if you just make the minimum payments on all of your balances, be sure to pay your bills on time. Because if you don't do that, then none of these other techniques or tips or tricks are going to do you any good. So the first thing that you're going to want to do if you are trying to build your credit from scratch or try to rebuild it after a negative event in your life that caused your credit score to tank, is you are going to want to get some credit cards. Now, if you already have some credit cards, don't worry about applying for new cards. Continue to use the ones that you've already got. But if you don't have any credit cards, then it's time to start applying for some. I highly recommend starting off with secured credit cards because they are the easiest to get. Approval rate is almost guaranteed. So a secured credit card is a little bit different than a normal credit card in that you first have to post a security deposit with your credit card company. Usually that's going to be a few $100s, maybe $200-$300. It just depends on which brand you go with. So what they're then going to do is they're just going to kind of hold on to this money as a deposit in the event that you don't repay your bills. So what they're going to do then is if you put up a $300 deposit, they are then going to issue you a credit card with a $300 limit. Now, if you spend money with this card, you still have to pay that money back at the end of the month when they give you, your monthly statements. So if you go out to lunch and you buy a $10 sandwich, you're still going to owe them another $10 at the end of the month so that this $300 doesn't ever get touched. Now, the good news is that with these secured credit cards, once your credit score hits a certain point, once it hits a cutoff limit, the credit card companies will typically automatically switch you from a secured credit card to an unsecured credit card. And that's important because that means you get that initial deposit back so that you can start using that for other things. Now, there's a lot of different secured credit cards out there, but one of my favorites is going to be the Discover It Cashback Secured Credit Card. And I really like this one because this is literally the only secured credit card that has any kind of rewards or point system or anything like that. So what this credit card is going to do is it is going to give you 2% cash back on all gas stations and restaurant purchases. In addition to this 2%, it's also going to give you 1% cash back on all other purchases. And your cash back for the first year is going to be doubled, which means essentially you are getting 4% cash back at restaurants and gas stations and 2% everywhere else. Now, this is pretty phenomenal, especially considering this is the only secured credit card that has any kind of points or bonuses. So if you have to pick one, I would say go with this one. Plus, it has no annual fee. Now, one of the downsides with a secured credit card is the credit limits are typically pretty low. Like I said, they're only going to be equal to your deposit, which might only be, $200-$300, which means it's really hard to keep your utilization rate low on these cards. Just because you have a $300 limit does not mean that you want to spend $300 on this credit card every month. Some people think that by spending a lot of money and then paying that money off every month, they're showing the credit card companies that they can handle, a lot of debt and a lot of payments, when actually the reverse is true. Your credit card companies want you to use relatively as little as possible of the available credit to you. Typically, it's recommended that you stay below a 30% utilization rate. This means if you have a credit limit of $300, the most that you would really want to spend every month on this card is about 90 bucks. So this is not something that you're gonna use for like your everyday spending and that kind of stuff. I highly recommend just putting some kind of a subscription-based service, something like a Netflix or Amazon Prime, something like that on this card, and then just set it up on auto pay. That way every month this card is getting billed and then paid off, billed and then paid off. And it's also going to keep that relatively low utilization rate for you. Up next is becoming an authorized user on somebody else's card. Basically what this is going to be doing is piggybacking off of somebody else's good credit. So maybe you have a really close friend or family member, somebody that has really good credit and that trusts you completely. So what they're going to do is they're going to call up their credit card company, talk to customer service, and they're going to add you onto one of their credit cards. This means that in theory, you are also eligible to spend money on their credit card the exact same way that they can spend money on their credit card. But typically this authorized user is going to have that second card be sent to them instead of actually being sent to you. They're going to put in their address so that this second card never gets mailed to you. And if you don't have a physical credit card, and if you don't know their account number or anything like that, then realistically you still can't spend any money. But you get all of the benefits of being on their card. So as soon as you become an authorized user on somebody's account, the entire history of that particular credit card account is then going to show up on your credit statement. So if this friend or family member has been paying their bills on time for the last 10 years on this particular card, then guess what? It's going to show up that you have also been paying for the last 10 years on time with this particular card. So obviously that's going to help your credit score a lot. Now obviously there are some downfalls with this system. Both you and the other person need to trust each other explicitly, and this other person has to have good credit. It doesn't help to piggyback off of somebody who has equally bad credit as you have. And it's important that this person is very financially stable and that there's no life event in their future that's going to cause them to make a late payment. Because if they make a late payment, guess what? It also shows up that you made a late payment. And you don't want to get dinged on your credit score for what somebody else did. So make sure they're financially stable before talking to them about being added as an authorized user. Next up, we're going to talk about Experian Boost. And this is one of my favorite ways to increase your credit score if you're kind of on the low end of the credit range. All you got to do is go to Experian's website, I believe it's Experian.com, and sign up for Experian Boost. It's completely free, it doesn't cost you anything, and it takes about 5 minutes or less. It's super easy to do. So for those of you guys that don't know, Experian is one of the 3 major credit bureaus. These are the guys that actually provide all of the data that is used to generate your credit score. So in order to sign up for Experian Boost, you're going to need to input your bank account information into the Experian website. And once it's in there, Experian is going to scan your bank statements and look for things like utility payments or cell phone payments, and it's going to give you credit for making those payments on time. Because typically your utilities, your gas, electric, water, sewage, trash, all that kind of stuff, and your Sprint or AT&T, whatever phone service that you have, when you're making those payments are not helping your credit score because those payments never get reported to the credit bureaus. The only time these payments ever get reported is if you're late. So it only hurts your credit. It doesn't help when you actually make these payments on time. But by linking your bank account statement with Experian, it's going to then scan your statements and look for all of these on-time payments, and it's actually going to give you credit for that. Now, one of the great things about this program is you can see your credit score change instantaneously right there on the Experian website. So you know exactly how much signing up for Experian Boost helped your credit score. Experian estimates that the average user will see about a 13-point increase in their credit score, but if for whatever reason your credit score actually goes down, you can simply unregister for Experian Boost and your credit score will instantly revert to what it was previously. And that's pretty fantastic because in this situation, your credit score can only go up. You know, if you like your results, then keep them. But if you don't like your results, simply unregister and continue on as you had previously. So Experian Boost is a fantastic product. The only downside to Experian Boost is that it only works with Experian. It doesn't work for your other two credit bureaus. So in this case, if you are in a rush to try to get your credit score up as much as possible, you can actually pay some third-party data providers to essentially do the same thing, to report your utility and your rent payments to the other two credit bureaus. So while this does cost a little bit of money, it's an easy way to show that you're paying a variety of different bills on time, and so theoretically that could increase your score by a fair amount. Now there's a lot of different data providers out there. One of them that I kind of like is Level Credit. They can be found at levelcredit.com. They charge a $6.95 a month fee, and they will report to, like I said, those other two credit bureaus, Equifax and TransUnion, and they're going to look for things like your rent payments, utility bill payments, all that stuff, and report that to those other two credit bureaus. And in addition to that $6.95 a month fee, for an additional fee, they will also look back into your history, and you can provide up to 24 months worth of data to these credit bureaus, like I said, for an extra fee. Now, since this does cost about $7 a month for their base plan, over a course of the year, that can start to become, a decent amount of money, roughly $100. So I really only suggest this if you are trying to quickly raise your credit score for whatever reason. Otherwise, there's a lot cheaper options out there. And lastly, one that still costs a little bit of money, but is very underused in my opinion, is going to be credit builder loans. Now these are going to be loans that you're going to go to probably the smaller banks. You're not going to go to Wells Fargo and Chase. You're going to go to kind of those mom and pop regional banks, or more than likely you're going to go to a credit union to obtain one of these loans. So essentially what it is you are going to get a loan from this credit union, but instead of them actually giving you the money outright, they are going to put that money into some sort of like a checking or savings account that you don't really have access to. Now these loans are relatively small in nature. Typically you can find them for $200-300, and then over the course of the next year or two, you are then going to repay this, $300 or whatever it was. You're going to repay this back to that credit union plus interest, and then at the end of that period, that year or two, once you have fulfilled your obligations and made these payments, they are then going to release those funds in that savings account to you. So not only is this a good way to build your credit, it's also kind of a forced savings account. Because at the end of this year, that means that if you had a $300 loan, they're going to give you the $300. Now the downside, of course, is that you have to make monthly payments on time plus interest. So ultimately it's going to cost you a little bit of money, but the interest rates are actually pretty decent on these kind of loans. So there's a lot of different places that will give these products, like I said, but I know that First Financial Credit Union, you can go online and you can apply for one of their loans. They have plans starting as low as $300, and they charge a 12% interest rate. But if you make payments on time like you're supposed to, they will actually refund half of that interest rate, which essentially brings your interest rate on these loans down to only 6%. So essentially a $300 loan at 6% interest rate means you're going to be paying somewhere probably between 25 and 30 bucks per month for this loan product. And then over the course of the lifetime of this loan, this 1-year plan, you're going to be paying less than 20 bucks in total interest. So it's really not all that expensive. And like I said, at the end of that 1 year, once you've made all of these, 12 consecutive payments, you get that $300 back. So you have a nice little chunk of change, and you've increased your credit score in the meantime. So there you go, folks. 5 quick and easy ways to start boosting your credit score if you're on the lower end of the credit spectrum. If you found this video useful, be sure to subscribe, leave a comment down below. I have new videos every week, and I'll see you all again next time. Thanks.